This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode number 42. Our guest today is Tommy Fresh of the Fresh and Bud Podcast. And this episode is brought to you by FAB Cards. Yes, FAB Cards is the place to go for Flesh and Blood and all your other trading card needs. Get all the tools you need to navigate the world of Wraith shipped directly to your door. Go to www.kfabcards.com. That's www.kayfabecards.com. The episode today, we're going to be talking about things like, Levia, obviously with Tommy on the program, as well as digging into what a 5 Intellect Hero would look like. We got a bunch of cool suggestions from the community, and Tommy and I are going to dig through them. But first, we've got the facts. We're starting with the updated Living Legend standings. Ooh, so close. Day late, buck short for Prism, who holds fast at 998 Living Legends points. Again, you need a cool 1,000 to cross into Living Legend territory. Prism just right up against the edge. Nobody just nudged her off the cliff just yet, but she is standing tall at 998 Living Legend points. Skirmish season is getting ready to kick off. That will be going on from July 30th to August 21st. You can go to fabtcg.com, use the event locator, find out where all your skirmish events are happening in your area. How about this? The game state of the week is going to be one Handsome Dan, who presented 40 damage in the Louisiana finals of a wonderful little community tournament held by Dr. Blaine Laverne. That would be Elaine's stepfather, who brought the community together and had a wonderful time there in Louisiana. And this was the finals. It was Handsome Dan versus Brian Basoko. And I remember this vividly because Brian said, as long as Dan doesn't do 40 to me, I should win this game. And Dan did 40, and man, oh man, as you can see there was a double layering, 2 lines of text here for this combat chain, so good job, Dan. If you've got a game state of the week, a nice picture of a crazy game state, you can send it to me on Twitter at WatchFlake, or on Discord as well, so join the Discord and all that jazz. Please submit them. We'll feature them every week as we get them. And I want to say a big shout out as well to all of our Patreon members. You can go to patreon.com/instantspeedpod. Support the podcast. If you like what you see here, help keep the lights on for as little as $1 a month. You could support us, give us a nice pat on the back and say, hey, we like what you do, so thank you so much. Again, this is Instant Speed number 42. Our guest is Tommy Fresh, and he joins us on the program. The Instant Speed Podcast is always a better place when this particular guest just happens to drop on by. He is the host of Fresh and Buds, another awesome podcast, a Levia player on top of all of it, and more than that, most importantly, one of my dearest friends, but also a ranch denier. Welcome to the show, Thomas Von Freshness. How are you, Thomas?
I'm well. And I don't know if ranch denier is like an appropriate term for me. I know it exists. I'm not denying its existence. I'm denying it going into my face hole or whatever. But it's good. It's good. I'm glad to be back on Instant Speed, the premier Flesh and Blood podcast, hosted by you, my friend. And this is great.
Is it premier? Is it the premier podcast? I don't know if I've reached such echelons. There's a lot of great content out there. I just want to be considered amongst the greats, such as Arsenal Pass and Fresh and Buds. And there's so many. There's the Pitch Perfect podcast. There's the Combat Chain. There's obviously Flesh and Pod. Another awesome one with some great people like Abby, Jordan, and Logan. There's so many good friends. This is what I love about this community, Thomas, is that you and I not only have just developed a great friendship, despite our disagreements on such things such as the ranch versus blue cheese debate, the significance of one New Jersey, of which you have said is just the best place, correct?
It is the best. And actually, this is something that came up on my most recent on my podcast with Jordan from Flesh and Pod. I gave him some shit about being from Ohio, and we kind of got into it about being proud of where you're from is important, whether or not it's Ohio. I don't know, but New Jersey is simply the best.
Okay.
Uh,
Is it the best, Thomas, or is it more so that it's like good adjacent? Like you're next to New York. You're next to, you're below Canada to a degree. Like you're good adjacent, but are you really like the greatest? Because nobody out there. And you could look. I'm merely spitballing here. You live there. You're around it, but like nobody from New York is like, yeah, come to New York. We're right next to New Jersey. Like nobody says that, right?
I guess not, but you got to fly into Newark to get to New York a lot of the times, depending where you're coming from. And I will say, I was in New York last night for a concert, and every time I go to New York, I kind of start to hate it a little bit more. And we were leaving the concert, and I had to take the Lincoln Tunnel, and for whatever reason, they made us go around, which was like a 20-minute detour to go a half a mile just to get into the Lincoln Tunnel, which just seemed like, I already don't want to be in this tunnel, and you're making it harder for me. So I don't know. We're 50 states. We're all great in our own certain ways, I guess. But New Jersey's the best one. That's just it.
Well, look, I'm not gonna argue with you because it would be futile. But nonetheless, the state of Fresh and Buds is what I want to talk about. Because last time I was on your podcast, you asked me about Instant Speed and what's going on. But for yourself, one thing that I have been very happy to see develop is that I'm in your Discord with a lot of amazing people that have great discussions there. You yourself have sort of been the ringmaster of that circus, but it's a circus I want to attend because there's no animal cruelty, very few clownage going on, but you're certainly in the middle of it, and it's a great space to be. I don't interact with, like, this is the other thing, is that I'm in way too many Discords as it is, and it's hard to keep up with things, but yours is one that I always check in on because I just love you and love all the things you're doing. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of Fresh and Buds.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Discord, the buds. It really kind of personifies what I really love about, doing my podcast and creating content in this sphere is kind of bringing people together and just kind of being buds. That's like what it was all about, right? So, the Discord's awesome. It's at a point now. If like I'm really busy with my day job, I don't even need to like go in there and start conversations because conversations are happening all the time, and that's awesome. I love that, and like a lot of great friendships I've seen people develop in the Buzz Discord is pretty cool as well. And the podcast itself is, I mean, this week, probably the same day as this one's coming out, will be episode 50,
Wow.
which is very exciting. And I'll be joined by Taylor Morrow of the Attack Action Podcast, one of my favorites. He was my first guest, and he's joining me for episode 50, which is very exciting. I love Taylor and Isaac and what they do over there. And yeah, it's just we're keeping it rolling. It'll be 1 year of the podcast in August, which is crazy. You start a podcast, you never know how long it's going to go. I know you've said yourself that you've told to pack it up at some point or whatever, and in reality you can just keep going, and it's fun, and maybe there's different like periods of time where it's more popular or less popular in regards to my podcast, but I enjoy doing it regardless, and I'm going to keep doing it. And that's basically where I'm at, just kind of doing it, and it feels good now to be qualified for nationals, which a year ago I would have never thought would have happened. So it's kind of, and I don't know if I'm going to switch into any more like competitive focused content, but it'll be nice to kind of represent the podcast at nationals.
That would be great. I mean, you represented the podcast at the Pro Tour, right? But in such a unique way. But you did qualify for nationals, which we're going to get into in just a second here. But I also just want to dig back into 50 episodes, which I think a lot of people don't understand the significance of 50. The significance of 10, let alone 50, is incredible in itself. There's a friend of mine from high school. I remember He definitely not listening, but a friend of mine by the name of Luca, his father owned a restaurant, and I remember we were taking an economics course in high school. Don't ask me why, but we're taking an economics course, and the teacher was mentioning about how most restaurants fail within the first year, and that kind of resonated with me. The reason why I bring up Luca is because he raised his hand and said, "My father's restaurant has been around for 12 years," and we're like, "Oh, that's amazing, Luca." So I don't know why this popped into my head. That said, podcasts are they're so unless you have a prior established, notoriety or an attraction for people to want to consume your content, starting something, out of the blue is not an easy endeavor. And 50 episodes, Tommy, is massive. So I want to say congratulations. This is 42 for us. 42 for Instant Speed. 50 is something that, like you mentioned, it was a pipe dream way long ago, especially when there were people saying, yeah, it's not working out, you should pack it in. But there are two things that I will never give up on. It's following my passions for cards and trying to date Shakira. Those are two things that I will never drop the ball on. So allow me, please, to say congratulations to you for 50 episodes of Fresh and Butts, because without you and your community, I know that there's a lot of people that would have an empty space in some form or facet on their weekly routine. So cheers to you, buddy. Big time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do like that kind of stat you threw out there about restaurants. I think there is a stat, and I'm probably going to butcher the actual number of the stat, but for podcasts, I believe if you have a podcast and you're creating a podcast, you are already doing more. You're like in the top 1 percentile of all podcasts ever created, right? Because so many people create a podcast, they do a couple episodes, maybe one episode, and never continue it. So if you're continuing to put out something, you are already in the higher echelon of at least consistency in the podcast realm, which is pretty crazy.
It is. It's because it's intimidating to, and it's the same with streaming. It's the same where you get essentially like a report card after everything you do. It's like, imagine everything you do, you get a detailed analytical report of your performance in the sense of views and clicks and numbers. And it's intimidating because anybody who's just trying to get off the ground are going to look at their first episode and say, I got 3 views. Like, how is this ever going to be sustainable? But 3 becomes 10, 10 becomes 20, 20 becomes 100, and then who knows where you're at. And it's just it's a thing. So it's a struggle, and there's a lot of people on that route. And unless you're absolutely passionate about the content, you are never going to get this, off the ground. So, but that is seen in droves in many podcasts, but yours specifically. So cheers to you, Tommy, again. But we want to talk about the fact that, like you mentioned, we're going to sort of package deal these, which is qualifying for nationals, which, first of all, congratulations to you. And second of all, doing it on Levia and representing the League of Levia, which I only found out about in the past month or so. I think it was in Ohio that I found out about the League of Levia. But tell us a little bit about the League of Levia and you playing Levia at nationals. Walk us through that moment where you got through that top 8. First of all, getting into top 8 and then winning that quarterfinals match. Walk us through all of that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to start with the League of Levia. You got to give a huge shout out to, his name is synonymous with Levia at this point. Ethan Van Sant, aka Man Sant on YouTube, who is incredible, is an amazing person, amazing Levia player. I had him on my podcast. It was just a Levia love fest. It was probably a bit too much for a lot of people, but we had a lot of fun, and it was one of the most fun episodes I've ever recorded because it was just like a lot of passion. And that's what Levia is, right? You got to be passionate about it because you're going to lose a lot. Like when you're figuring out how to play Levia. And just the scab skins roll one and then pop the gloves, roll another one. It happens, and that's what it is. But I found that I know that deck so well, and I play a lot of it, and I feel best going into a tournament when I know my deck inside and out. And there are plenty of quote unquote better decks you can bring to any given tournament, and especially if Levia is the deck the best, there will be plenty of other better decks than Levia. However, going into a space right now, especially after Uprising's released, and also the data's all over the place with Road to Nationals and stuff like that. You know, we only recently had the calling over in Europe that we saw, you know, Phi kind of really show its fangs, but other than that, the RTNs, like, all these different heroes are winning, all these different heroes are top 8ing, so people don't really know what to expect at these RTNs. So I think that's gave me an edge because I know my deck very well, and this meta right now kind of rewards those who kind of like stuck to their favorite for a long time, and I think that she was already in a pretty decent spot once Starvo left, so that was great. So yeah. Anyway, the RTN that I attended was at Play Hoboken in Hoboken, New Jersey. Funny enough, that was the store that I played my first event ever a year ago at their own Road to Nationals last year. I was playing Chain and I got wiped. I didn't even own a Carrion Husk at the time, but I wanted to go to an event. So flash forward a year later, I'm playing at Play Hoboken with Levia. I do have a Carrion Husk this time. And I sit down in round 1, Briar, and I love facing Briar with Levia because anything that's attacking me allows me to fill up my graveyard, kind of get things going.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah, and Briar's in a weird spot because Briar is certainly powerful, but is also somewhat of a glass cannon. If you don't get the Mount Heroic out, or depending on how you're playing. I know Atark is still high on the Cheerios nonsense with Briar.
Nonsense.
Atark will. I think he'll always be.
It's hard to call the U.S. national champions like his baby nonsense after he just completely dummied the field with the deck. But I get what you're saying. It's
yeah.
Still on that train.
It's nonsense to me because I don't want to play against it mostly. But you know, it's speaking of something I don't want to play against. Round 2, I played against Prism, and God, and I'm sure you mentioned it at the top of the show, but Prism is so close to Living Legend, and all someone needed to do was just win another RTN, and they didn't. And you know, whatever. We're here, and now we got to wait a little bit longer to see if she can hit Living Legend. I did play a Prism player round 2. I unfortunately for them, I rolled Scab Skins 5 times, and I hit 5, 5, 4, 6, and 5.
Oh my god!
And you know, it just did not go that well for the Prism player. I picked up my first loss in round 3 against. God, I can't even remember now. I lost to something. It was a close one. Oh, Dorinthia. There were 2 Dorinthias in the top 8, and I lost to one in Swiss. And Dorinthia was playing pretty well. It's the first time I got to play against Dorinthia since the addition of the new, the classic battle cards. And then I faced some other decks. I don't remember. It was all a blur because I also didn't really eat that day, and I was like, by the end of it, I was wiped. Top 8. I played against Phi round 1 to get into the top 4 to qualify. I actually like the Phi matchup with Levia. Sounds weird because Phi seems so potent.
But how does that play out? Because this is what again, I have the only reps I have on Levia are in Blitz, and I'm talking about the first 2 weeks that I've ever played this game. I had a Levia Blitz deck, which is right here, like right next to me, and I'm just curious, is it a race? Are you blocking out? Because I feel like early on, and this is just, I would imagine, just standard Levia strategy, is you need to fill your graveyard, so you're probably blocking a hell of a lot early in order to eventually eat a weak turn and then turn things around and then go ham, right?
Yeah, so essentially, it's just for context, I was on the Mandible Claws build of Levia, and my list is in the Buds Discord. If anybody wants to join, it's free to join. But so I am trying to output a lot of damage, but Phi, I find outside of the Stubby Hammer's turn, you have to play that matchup like you're playing a traditional Katsu or whatever. Basically, be worried about them getting mask triggers and use those blocks as ways to fill up your graveyard. And then basically they are going to try to output that crazy amount of damage. But the one thing that Levia has that no other hero except for Young Chain has right now in CC is the carrying husk. It's the best equipment in the game and the best reason to play Levia right now. And carrying husk is just so tough for Fi to go over. You know, it blocks probably like a 5 or a 6 attack, but they're not really hitting for 7 somewhere in that long chain of attacks, and it could really make the difference. And I found that you save those equipment blocks for the stubby hammers turn, and you can easily turn the corner because once the stubby hammers is gone, it feels like Fi's gonna sputter, and you're gonna start going Dread Screamer into Graveling Growl, 13 damage like multiple times, and to kind of close out the game. And once Fi's blocking, they lose.
Yeah, you get to sort of have to shift that momentum to a particular point. Now, you did you get to the finals? Did you sputter out at in semifinals? What happened?
I got to the finals. I played a dash in the the semis. I played a dash in the semis, and it was kind of like that Teklo Pounder super aggro version of dash. I think it's basically I got to make sure I hit my Blood Rush Bellows, and I think it's a pretty good matchup. The on hits that they have aren't crazy enough that it makes Levia kind of hurt. If they ran Pummel, it might have been a different story, but they weren't running Pummel. And then I made it to the finals against Lexi, a friend that plays at my LGS Highlander games up in Boonton, New Jersey, Nick, who was on Lexi. And, we were just having fun. We were both qualified, and I rolled the Scab Skins 1-1. And, and that was pretty much it after that. Though it was fun. It was fun, like playing someone. It's also the nice thing about Road to Nats is once you're into the top 4, you're qualified, so you can kind of relax little bit. And then on top of that, being in the finals with a friend was really cool because then you can kind of joke around. Like he did the banish 3 thing, and he hit miss, and then hit. He's like, oh my god! I was like, oh yeah, get better at this game, man. Like but it was a lot of fun. I felt great, and it felt pretty cool to get to this Road to Nats season a year later after starting playing the game, and to kind of have some I guess hard work pay off, which is the best thing about this game. I feel like.
Yeah, it's such an amazing feeling. I like you. I was in Louisiana this past weekend visiting people like Elaine and Brian Basoko, Tan and Grace. There was a little bit of a get together at put on by Elaine's parents at their house in Lafayette, and in one of the days we went to their LGS, a place called Gamers Paradise. They had at RTN, and it was draft, and I ended up qualifying for Nats through there as well. But like you, it was a year in the making because I remember last year's Nationals was a struggle. It was a slog. It was a learning experience. I was getting absolutely just dummied most of the time. It was like, okay, I went from a 2-4 record to a 3-3 record to a 4-2 record at all the RTNs I attended. My best finish was like an 11th place or whatever. And it was like, okay, it is what it is. And, you do what you do. But this time you're going there. But I had a very similar experience because my top 8 was Tannen. My semifinals was Elaine, and my finals was Brian Basoko. So it was all friends. And the funny part was that like Tannen was playing loosey goosey and put up a good fight, but didn't care because he wasn't going to be playing. He's going to be casting the Nationals, so he didn't care. So he essentially just let me have the win. Like, there's no question about it. He could have absolutely won that game, but he just was like, nah, he's like, I'm not qualifying. Like, we'll get you in there, big boy. And I was like, wow, okay. Elaine was just Elaine. The playing against Elaine was hilarious because she was just like, "Well, I'm already qualified. I don't care." She was on Phi. It was a draft. It was draft. So she was on Phi. I was on Dromai, and she was just like, "Yeah, we're just not gonna block at all either way." And it was a close game. I won. And against Brian, it was the same thing. We were both like just. It was just both us having a good time, laughing about things. There's a lot less pressure, and I think that this is what's funny is that you get to the hardest match is that top 8 match. Like that is the most stressful thing because if you lose that, you've come so far, you've come so close, and then you're sort of gone with it. But now that you're in, are you going to be what kind of approach? And now look, I'm not trying to say that these are mutually exclusive, but when you're playing in nationals, are you going to try hard or are you going to Levia? And you could try hard in Levia, but I mean, let's be real, it's not the optimal line of play.
Yeah, well, we don't know at this point. You know, a lot could change between now and then. Now, I will say I was traveling a lot the 2 weeks leading into this RTN that I got qualified with. And I played very little Flesh and Blood in those 2 weeks outside of your instant speed tournament that you're running through your Discord, which is awesome.
Thank you.
And so it's one of those things where I don't want to. I can't really preach like the testing because I didn't test a lot. And I didn't even really know what to expect outside of Phi because both my opponents in your tournament were Phi players, and it's one of those things. I do plan on testing for nationals now that I'm qualified, and I don't know. I mean, I'm bringing Levia. There's no doubt that I'm going to bring Levia. Now the testing that I need to do the most is draft, and I'm assuming it's going to be a split format like it was last year. My drafts so far in Uprising have not gone the best outside of the drafts I did in Vegas. Now, that being said, every draft I've had since then has either been 7 players, 9 players, or 11 players. I haven't had an actual 8-player draft since I've came back from Vegas. So I really need to kind of hit the books there. And I plan on taking it as serious as I can. Now, Levia might not sound like I'm taking it seriously, but I am. And I do believe in that deck, and I do believe it can win. Do I also believe that it's going to take a little bit of a hot streak on my scab skins probably throughout the tournament? Yes. Do I think that is the optimal play or way to play the game? Probably not, but it's the way I like to play, and I enjoy the rush of it. And if I'm not enjoying myself with the deck, I will perform poorly, I think, in my opinion. So I need to enjoy what I'm doing, whether it's losing to Blood Debt or not. I don't know. It's
a fascinating approach that you're taking here because you're saying that it's not that you're saying that you're not, if you don't enjoy a deck, you're not going to play it. It's that if you don't enjoy it playing a deck, you perform worse, which is a different way that not having fun can affect your gameplay. Some people say if I don't enjoy the deck, I'm just not going to play it altogether. But I mean, this is a whole different ballgame. This is nationals, and how much of this for you is stubbornness to your girl Levia, and how much of this is just actual, like you could say that you want to kind of prove to the world that there's something there, but I feel like and this is like, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but you got to the finals with Levia. There's something there, but I feel like so many people have tried, and this is no slouch on you, but if I feel like has Ethan won an RTN outright or? Okay,
so yeah, he won this weekend, actually, this past weekend, okay, on the Saturday.
Beauty. So there's something there, and I guess, but I mean, if something emerges as just like, the tits, as it were, like, are you gonna take a little side swipe and sort of put Levia on the shelf for a bit and try to win a nationals, or what's your deal, man? Like, putting you on the spot here. Are you committing? Are you just hammering it in, etched in stone? Levia is the way to go.
Okay, here's the deal. I think it would take a lot for me to come off of Levia for nationals. I will say that. And yes, I am stubborn. I'm very stubborn, and I cannot help it. It's who I am, and I don't know. I like what I like. So, it's hard to say. It would take something to the level of everybody's, and this could actually happen, and this is something that I've actually feared quite a bit, is a reactionary meta to Phi. And the reactionary meta to Phi is loading up on either Oldhams or Pummels. And if Pummel is popular, Levia is going to hurt. Because hand disruption destroys Levia. And we saw that with Starvo. And I do not want to get pummeled all day at nationals. However, if you're out there listening, don't do that. It's just like I'm hoping. It's lucky that we have like Pro Tour well before nationals comes around, like at least a month. So a lot of things are going to change in the next 2 months. That being said, it's going to take a lot for me to not play Levia, and I truly think that right now, to make my chances the best that they can be, I need to really just hit the books on this draft format, because that's where I would expect at this, if the tournament was this weekend, that's where I expect I would take most of my losses. So yeah.
No, yeah. Well, I for one am very excited. I'm going to be at the U.S. Nationals. I'll be casting that. So I will be absolutely 1,000% lobbying for a round one Thomas von Freshness on camera, because you're going to be bringing the spice, and we need to have some Thomas in everybody's eye holes for sure. So that's exciting. I mean, besides that, it's just cool to be. We're going to be in North Carolina hanging out, you and I, and I just want that more than anything. Frankly, I want you to win too, but like, I mean, I can't pick favorites.
Hanging out's better.
Yeah, hanging out's kind of better, but hanging out with you as champion is kind of a really awesome thing. Can we say that if you win, you will take me out for food? Can we just lock that in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when I win, which is going to happen.
Perfect.
I'm going to bring Tarek Patel back onto my podcast, kind of just rubbing his face like, yeah, you leave the country now, The real king is here,
I was going to say, he pieced out. He might actually be going back. Who the hell knows? But it's just incredible to have the U.S. national champion as a Canadian citizen living in Canada. And hey, you do you, America. We're not going to complain. But we also want to get into a little bit of a discussion, because this was a fun little brain exercise I had over the past few days, and I kind of roped a few people into it to get some of their insights. But what would a 5 intellect hero be? We have a 3 intellect hero with Data Doll. 4 is essentially status quo. But where would 5 intellect slot in? What would that look like? I think that intellect, when you're looking at a hero's stats, like you're looking at the card, the most powerful and impactful number, that one digit that really changes things, would be intellect. I feel if you change that by +1 or -1, that really makes or breaks a hero. So I'm going to ask you, Thomas von Freshness, I want to ask you what a 5 intellect hero would be in your mind. And as you're kind of mulling over it, if you need a couple seconds, I did get some ideas from the community. A bunch of people have chimed in. I have about a half dozen or so ideas. If you want me to sort of toss these out first while you collect your thoughts, or?
Well, I have some initial thoughts, right? I think from a design aspect, I think there definitely had to be some kind of downside, right? And what that downside is, I do not know. You could even say something like, oh, they can't have a weapon, but that, we see heroes that have weapons that rarely use them all the time. So that doesn't really pan out. I think there's, the discussion, and I see it here, about how the arsenal would work for this hero. Would be interesting. And then also what kind of class it would be, because giving 5 intellect to any guardian would be dangerous, and I think to any Runeblade would be dangerous. So maybe just give it to a brute, and call it a day. Maybe is what we should really do. But but let's take a look at what some of
So
the
we
people at large have to say.
yeah, we got some fielded in, but I like how you mentioned brute because if I'm thinking about, imagine like a Rhinar with 5, and it actually makes it more difficult to guarantee that you're discarding a 6 out of hand, right? If there's more cards in hand, so that is a built-in detriment to the advantage to a degree. So I actually think that that's a fascinating one to think about. But yeah, if you're giving Guardian a 5th card, like there's going to be pulverized turns that don't require any kind of seismic surge help, any kind of arsenal. It's just you have 5. You're going to pitch 4 cards and slam for 14. That's kind of how it goes. But it's a balance metric on the card is how it goes, much like life totals, where you see someone like Kano has 30 life. The first thing that popped to my head was, okay, if you're going to have 5 intellect, you're going to have like 25 life for the adult hero, or 26. And then the other one is like a 13, where, that seems ridiculous. But so the fact that it's printed on the card, that intellect is a statistic on the card, it's a metric on the card, leads me to believe that there's going to be not just one, but multiple cards that have 5 intellect down the line. Because otherwise, if it was just that much of a rare aspect to a hero, it would have just been printed as the card's ability. Like, you can draw an extra card at the start of your turn. So, and all other heroes would just not have an intellect printed on the card. It would just be in the rule book. You draw 4, unless otherwise stated. And quote unquote, unless otherwise stated, would be cards like Nourishing Emptiness, Hitting, and stuff like that. Anyway, that's kind of where it is. Let's talk. Let's go into the suggestions here from the community. One of them from JPFTW off of Discord says it has to have no text box, right? Just 5 intellect. So no class, no nothing. It's essentially like this shapeless blob that has 40 health, 5 intellect, but no class, no nothing. So you're just rocking all generics, and there's no abilities.
I do like that idea. The only problem with that, right, becomes an issue for LSS, because then they have to be super careful about what generics they print, right? Like going forward, they'd be like, any generic they print, they're like, well, does this break the 5 intellect hero that we have? But as it stands right now, I think that would be somewhat of a fair 5 intellect hero in this current meta.
Yeah, you'd have like Nimblism, Overload, Ravenous Rabble, Scar for Scar, Scar for Scar, and see you next week kind of thing. Logan Peterson of said Flesh and Pod podcast is 5 intellect hero. You may block with or pitch cards from arsenal. Cards in your arsenal cannot be played. Whenever you pitch or defend with a card, lose 1 life. This actually kind of digs into what my initial idea was, which was you basically you take a hit every turn. I like his refinement here is that every time you defend with a card, you lose a life. I think that's actually pretty rad, and I think that that's an interesting balance option as well. But it would obviously need refinement. What do you think about this one?
I do like it, and I do like Logan. So, that's a pretty good combo there. Now, I'm looking at this, and I'm starting to like get the wheels turning about what the Necromancer hero could do, because this feels very Necromancer, right? Kind of like gonna fall apart when you like block and stuff like that. I kind of like that mechanic of like losing a life whenever you block or pitch. Like, kind of be like, hey, listen, you gotta attack and attack hard. And, you're going to pay a price to block.
Okay. Next one. This one's Brian Basoko. We discussed this in a hot tub in Louisiana, him and I, which was fascinating. Brian approached this more so with an approach of like a hero that has a built-in kind of filtration effect, where basically you drop to 5, but the card states the card ability is at the start of your turn, place a card from hand at the bottom of your deck. So you drop to 5 at the end of your turn, but when your turn begins, you got to pick one of those cards and put it at the bottom of your deck. So you're seeing more cards, but you have to put one away. You have to tuck one away. So you'll play with a 4-card hand, but you're seeing an additional card to sort of fix your hand where necessary.
I would prefer that when you draw the cards, right? Because what I'm thinking is, right, you draw the 5 because as it reads, it's at the start of your turn. You could just block out with all 5 cards, right? You can just play a super defensive game plan and block out. You get like 5 cards worth of blocking value, and then I'd put something from the bottom of from my hand on the bottom of the deck. I don't have anything left, so I would need it to read, at the end of the turn or whatever after you've drawn your 5. Put one on the bottom.
But what I like about this one is that it allows you to adapt your game plan. Like, this is the advantage effect to it as well, is that it allows you to see 5 cards, and based on what your opponent does on their turn, you might change. You're like, okay, these are the 4 cards I intend on keeping, but he's going, my opponent's going a lot more aggressive, so I'm going to have to block more, which means that I need to keep this card because I want it for Arsenal, or I want this card because I'm going to want to keep it to pitch to swing with a weapon. I think that is interesting. But also, I think in addition to this is that, like you're saying, if at the beginning of your turn, let's say you just block out all 5 cards, that's perfectly a viable strategy. But what if there was a caveat to this that said, if you cannot place a card under your deck, you lose 2 life. So
Now we're talking.
Now we're talking, because now you can no longer kind of play that ultra aggressive option, and if you're still blocking with 4 cards and keeping 1 at the beginning of your turn, you got to tuck it away. You have no turn, so that's still a possibility. But I agree. I think it would sort of, something like this would lean towards a more defensive hero looking for combos in that regard. Darkodius says just flat out no Arsenal. So you have the same kind of 5-card potential that everyone else does. You just don't have an Arsenal. So there's no hidden effect. There's no adding on a D-React out of Arsenal in that regard. What are your thoughts on just flat out no Arsenal?
I think you need a little bit more, right? Of kind of like a downside. Like, no Arsenal is definitely a downside, but I would need a little bit more. It has to be like no Arsenal, and then something else. Like even if it's like a lose a life if this. I don't know what that is, but I mean, I think no Arsenal is probably the way they would go if they were to go with the 5-card hand.
It's that's definitely an option. Andy Trong says flat out 5 cards, but attacks you control lose and cannot gain go again. So you're basically swinging for the fences on every turn. I feel like this would kind of allude more towards the previous defensive strategy, where if you're only swinging once, you're going to be blocking with 3, pitching and swinging for like a 7 attack for 3, so to speak. 7 for 3, 7 for 3, blocking out 3, blocking out 3. I don't know if I'm a fan of this one, but I can see what they're trying to do here. Andy kind of wants to say, well, a lot of the benefit of having 5-card hands, with an Arsenal in that regard, is that you can go super wide and have these you'll eventually bust through and leak damage. In this case, and I think the balance effect here is just that that's not the case. But I always feel like if you only swing with 1 card, you're usually dedicating 2 to 3 cards otherwise to defensive tactics. So I'm beginning to see a little bit of a theme here where 5-card heroes will always be defensive over aggressive, I think.
Yeah, I think if they were to put a downside to the 5 Intellect Hero, it probably has to be inherently anti-aggro, and we'll see this kind of defensive thing. Now, I'm looking at this one from Andy, and I'm just thinking about Lead the Charges being jammed into this 5 Intellect Hero deck, and because people will always find a way out of the I can't do go again. Well, watch this, the real scabskins, or whatever. So I think that's kind of on the right track. I don't think that's enough though.
Well, that's a great idea, and I think that's really, really smart, because what you're saying in this regard is like, okay, well, go again is not an action point, like in its truest form. So why don't we just gain action points and go ham? Cards like Time Skippers might be good and things like that. So I dig it. Okay, so that's pretty solid. Andrea Biaggi, aka Capello, says I think it could kind of be like a companion rules of deck building, or there needs to be sort of modified rules to deck building, is what Capello is saying. Your deck can, for instance, your deck can only contain one single color of pitch for a particular card. So let's say you're running Plunder Run, you can only run reds, or only run yellows, or only run blues. Or the hero cannot use equipment. Basically, what Capello is saying here is that it would be more so in the a deck building restriction rather than an ongoing card affliction, as it were. And then he gives an example of what a cleric hero with 5 intellect might be. For example, he says, okay, a cleric with 5 intellect would have the condition of, if you have not gained life this turn, your intellect is reduced by 1. So that kind of feeds into, there's a condition that needs to be met that sort of is thematic with the hero itself. But what do you think about something that is more restrictive in terms of deck building?
Yeah, I kind of like that. However, it does kind of lead me down the path of thinking that we probably will never see a 5 intellect hero in CC, right? It sounds like that is set up for some other kind of format, right? Like it feels weird to have a hero that you can only play certain cards or whatever outside of like class and stuff like that. But almost a la like singleton formats of other card games that I won't mention, and but it does kind of make sense. But I do really like that cleric idea. Actually, the more I read it, and I'm like that's kind of where I would like to see this end at.
Hell yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I like it. And leading to what you were mentioning about how it's a format restrictive kind of metric on a card, Atlas on Twitter says, I think something like this should be reserved more for supportive classes intended for things like PvE, like player versus environment, or ultimate pit fight, like an alchemist or a cleric, a class that, while having 5 intellect, is heavily encouraged or limited to playing cards like potions, trinkets, and mostly 2-block generics, things that basically are helping the team. And I think that if Flesh and Blood is eventually going to be releasing some sort of PvE style game plan or bundle or whatnot, having a hero with 5 intellect that's geared towards helping your teammates, I think, is a really good thing. Like, for instance, if their card pool was more so, I don't know the rules of Ultimate Pit Fighter too well, but cards that's like, I can use my attack reactions on my friends, like your cards, your reaction cards affect all are legal to play on anything. So you can block for your opponent, you can attack react for your opponent, you could pop your potions for your opponent and aid them. I think that's a fascinating a sort of approach there too. So in your estimation, well, you already kind of led to that as well. Is this more towards what you're leaning as a plausibility for 5 intellect hero?
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing about PvE and UPF to a certain extent, that the possibilities are a little bit more wide open, right? You don't have to worry, especially with PvE, right? You don't have to worry about something being too overpowered, because then they could just print an E that is more powerful, right? For whatever, however it's going to look for Flesh and Blood. And I do like that, and especially what you're saying, like the alchemist being able to use potion effects on any hero is like really cool.
So the last one, this one's from Tommy's Top Picks, kind of brings it all together to a degree of where this seems to have naturally progressed, or where we were kind of, skipping along towards anyways. Tommy's Top Picks on Twitter says, a 5 intellect hero means they are pretty big brain, but also has a pretty big advantage when it comes to blocking. So I'm thinking something like the Hulk, and I like the intellectual property here of kind of cross-pollinating Marvel, but brains of Bruce Banner, but tough like the Hulk. It would be a control deck with D-Reacts and potion specialization. So again, this essentially wraps it up in saying it would probably be a defensive-oriented control deck, but with potions, which is interesting because that's precisely what we're discussing from a PvE standpoint and from a CC standpoint. CC would probably be a lot of control, and PvE would be a lot of helping your buddies out and potions and things like that. So I think that's a fair wrap up on that.
Yeah. I mean, Tommy kind of hit the nail on the head here. He's got a great name. I've met Tommy. Tommy's awesome. And I think that makes the most sense. And whatever the Hulk, he's pretty cool. So we're all about the Hulk here.
Now, how did you feel about Grey Hulk? Now, for all those Marvel fans out there always was like Professor Hulk and like a smart Hulk, but the portrayal in the MCU, like the cinematic universe, what's your thoughts on Smart Hulk?
I haven't watched an MCU movie in probably like 6 years.
What?
I'm actually not an MCU guy. I'm if I need my superheroes to either have a trident like the one behind me, I think somewhere, or a batarang mostly. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm not a Marvel guy.
So you're a DC guy, and I mean,
Well, okay. To be fair, the DC movies are not good.
No.
As of late. Well, I mean, as of late, a little bit better, but you can miss me with the Ben Affleck nonsense. But
I thought Ben Affleck was a great Batman, in my opinion.
Better Bruce Wayne than he was a Batman. If that's even like sometimes the weirdest.
What'd you think about the new
thing.
Batman movie?
I loved it. I thought
it was
it
good.
really built the world in a way that we hadn't seen yet, and I am excited to see where it goes. I'm also I love Robert Pattinson, not for the Twilight stuff, but The Lighthouse is one of my favorite movies. So it's just anything with him in it, I'm all about.
Wasn't Willem Dafoe in that movie too?
He sure was.
I gotta see that.
Sure
That's the black and white movie, right? I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I see a black and white movie. I'm like, I'm not elegant and refined enough to watch a black and white movie.
Oh, this is. I mean, it's a great movie. It's a great film. But I wouldn't say elegant and refined is words I'd use. It's like batshit crazy. So like you should watch it. It's like nuts. You feel like you're losing your mind, which is, I guess a constant state for me. So it worked out.
Do you know what the greatest black and white movie of all time is?
It's just like a fact, or
Well, it should be fact.
It should be fact. Young Frankenstein.
No, that's incorrect. No, you're wrong, Thom. You are incorrect, Thomas. It is actually Clerks. Clerks is the greatest.
Oh, okay. I should know that. This is I failed my Jersey knowledge. Oh man, I'm a Mel Brooks guy though, so.
All right. I mean, Mel Brooks is like that was good. Like the one thing I know about Young Frankenstein, and I'll just be completely honest, I've not seen it, but I've seen clips. Isn't there one where is it like Frank Boyle plays Frankenstein or something, and he's singing "Putting on the Ritz"?
Yep. Yeah. It's incredible. You should watch. That is if you watch any Mel Brooks film, Young Frankenstein should be it.
I'm in. All right. Well, we are running out of time on the program. We wanted to talk a little bit about digital clients and the importance and such, but I think that's going to have to be for another episode, another guest, or maybe we'll bring Tommy back in and we'll just discuss it. But still, there is another segment left called Go Again, Mr. Thomas Von Freshness. Will you join us for Go Again?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right, we will be right back with Go Again after this brief word from BCW Supplies. Instant Speed is proudly supported by BCW Supplies. If you need protection for your cards, be it sleeves, deck boxes, storage, organizational tools, or hey, are you a comic book collector, a coin collector? BCW Supplies has your hookup. Use the code ISP10. Get 10% off all of your orders. Go to bcwsupplies.com. BCW, protect, store, display. All right, friends, it is time to go again on a series of questions. I have Thomas Von Freshness here of the newest of jerseys. He's going to be joining me for Go Again. Are you ready to go again?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready.
There was some hesitation there.
I'm sorry, I was reading something on not separate from the podcast.
Oh, you know what?
I'm getting ready for these Go Again questions.
No, I know your type. Like we're on a date, I'm asking you, we're talking, and you're just checking your phone. You scumbag. I know your type. For the record, though, the date that we did go on at the casino in Philadelphia, you gave me all of your attention. It was wonderful. So
yeah.
You're such a good guy. All right, here we go. Question number 1. Who is the greatest person to come from New Jersey?
This one's easy for me. I'm going to say Bruce Springsteen. I love Bruce Springsteen. And just so happens I was at a concert last night in the city seeing a band called Bleachers. And Bruce Springsteen came out for a song, and it was crazy, and we all lost our minds. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah, no, I guess you didn't know, right?
Yeah, no, he just they had a song together at some point, but they had played plenty of shows without him, and he just showed up, which is cool.
That's great. I wonder if you bought a ticket. Privilege. Okay, next one. What one card is Levia missing to become a perennial top 8 threat? Like, you can design a card here, but make it realistic.
If and I think I used this example multiple times. I think if there was something that just said create one soul shackle or something along that line, right? We need something to kind of turn off blood debt when you don't have any cards in hand, to like at least have the chance to. And I think that card might actually be too powerful because all of a sudden Hexagore looks like super good. And yeah, I think something that turns off blood debt on its own.
Do you have any kind of, like, you're talking about, like, what if there was a card that was like a Shadow Brute card that, attacked for 7, and it was like it costs 3, attacks for 7, and you get to pick and choose what you banish from the graveyard? Is that too strong?
No, actually, I don't think so. I think that's pretty solid.
Okay.
Because I actually like that in the beginning stages of the game, because then you can kind of like stack your graveyard however you want. It doesn't have to be the 6 in the beginning. So, yeah.
I like
Print it.
Print it. Ship it. Number 3, this one's from Capolo. Andre Biaggi saying, my question for Tommy Fresh is about deck building, if he has some sort of formula for the ratios, or if it's gut feeling in the ratios of costs versus pitches. First question is who's the hell is trusting you for deck building advice? But go for it, Tommy.
Great question. My answer is no comment.
Okay, I respect that. I have to maintain journalistic integrity here, keep my sources private and secure, as well as respect the answers and the privacy of my guest. So I will call you a coward, and I will move on.
I am a coward.
Number 4 is, what is your most proud achievement?
Oh, geez. I think I'm pretty stoked about hitting 50 episodes of Fresh and Buds right now. I'm pretty proud of it. As great as it is to be qualified for nationals and stuff like that, I think, anytime I feel like down on Flesh and Blood or just like so tired, anytime I boot up a podcast and start talking to someone, I'd feel so much better. And it's great to have done that 50 times and more on other people's podcasts, such as yours.
Well, thank you. You are always a well of knowledge when it comes to good food and discussion of good food. I have to ask you, what is the ideal walking around food?
Ooh, that is a good question. It's going to sound stupid, but I mean, it's not stupid, but I think cotton candy is just the best walking around food. Because like, if I think about someone walking around eating something, I get it's either a corn dog or a cotton candy, and it's basically anything on a stick.
Either way, you're at like some trashy kind of state fair, right? That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Like you just left the hog competition, like where you or like the cattle judging competition or whatever. True story, by the way. I remember I was going to go visit some friends in Minnesota, so we went to the Minnesota State Fair, and for fun, I ended up emailing some of the people out there who were organizing it, telling them that I was a renowned Canadian cattle farming judge, and I was asking if I could perhaps, and I was in town, that if they needed any, support in judging cattle for the cattle judging contest, and then they replied and told me that, well, we'll keep you in mind. Like, here's our what's your contact information? I just wanted it to be a hilarious joke where we're at the state fair and I had to tell my buddies, I'm like, hey, I'll be back in an hour. and
then judge this real quick.
And then they would be watching the cattle thing and I would be a judge. Did not fly though. Did not work out, but that was going to be one of the great ones. But you like you say, cotton candy, and I guess unless it's raining. But corn dog was what came to my mind, like some sort of hot dog related product.
Mm-hmm.
So,
big hot dog guy.
So am I.
Yeah.
But there's like a whole culture of different style hot dogs. Like if you go to Montreal, there's something called a steamy. A steamy is a small little hot dog, like a standard kind of crappy little hot dog. They used to be 50 cents, but now they're like $1.50 or something. But you can like cram like 4 or 5 of those bad boys, get a poutine and a drink, and you're good to go. That was like the move at 3 a.m. after the pub. But
a steamy. Now we in Jersey we have rippers. I don't and that's a deep fried hot dog that where like the skin kind of like gets crispy and rips.
ooh.
And it's really good. Rutt's Hut in Clifton, New Jersey is the place to get a good ripper. Any time of night, you get a little, whatever, Miller High Life next to it and you're good to go.
I'm gonna put a picture up on the screen for everybody at home. I had this monstrosity at a Toronto Blue Jays game. I don't know if you saw it. It's like this 12-inch, just absolute hilarity. And I made sure that there was nothing on it. I'm like, put all the stuff on the side because I want to hold this. I want to just really just live at the moment with this monstrosity. But in Toronto, there's like street meat here, like from the hot dog vendors, are really good because they're all like sausages for the most part, like Italian or Polish, which is hilarious because like I'm half Italian, half Polish, so I'm fitting in, baby. Like I can play both sides of the field. But like I've heard of places like Nathan's Hot Dogs and all these like famous places, and I've never been to them, and I really want to go because for me, I love hot dogs. I never want to learn how they're made or follow along with that whole thing, but damn, they're good.
They are so good. We're going to do a tour of North America and other countries too. I mean, one of the best hot dogs I've ever had was in Iceland. Funny enough, and yeah, we're going to do a tour. Me and you.
We should.
Hot dogs all day,
dude. Just like we'll get like a station wagon and just go around the country just trying hot dogs. Oh my god, we need a sponsor. That would be so good. Let's do that.
That'd be awesome. Nathan's, where are you?
Nathan's, give us a call. Screw Joey Chestnut, that clown. It's us now. It's all us. This one is from Greg at Darth Prentice saying, my question for the Fresh Lord. When did they first discover blue cheese dressing? And somewhat related, what besides blue cheese gets them out of bed in the morning?
I've been eating blue cheese dressing since I was a wee lad. My dad was big on it, and I think I've been big on it ever since. And the other question, Greg, is God, I don't know. Some days I don't know, but getting out of the bed, I don't know, getting to hang out. I like to hang out. Like I'm big on hanging out, and you can't hang out when you're asleep, so I'm big on hanging out.
Oh, that's not bad. I guess the way that you're prefacing that answer was like way back when during the famine, the only thing was picking fresh blue cheese off the trees. It's like, no, that's not at all how that happens, but I will buy that and we will package it and you could sell it and I will buy it. So second to last question is Mr. Thomas, what is your dream job?
My dream job.
You could say like hot dog sommelier or something like that.
Oh my God, that does sound amazing, doesn't it? It's like,
yeah.
This is a side note, but I mean, these are the kind of things that like will just make me so interested. I watched a 12-minute video on this guy who is a mustard expert, and he was just talking about, he was like blind taste testing mustards and saying, oh, this one's cheaper than the other. And I was like, that's so cool. So I would love to do that with hot dogs. But I think in reality, I think podcasting. I think I would love to podcast as a job.
That's you and I, man, in the same boat.
It's a dream.
It's like, just pay us. Somebody out there. Just pay us. We'll do this all the time. Last one. You have to pick 3 players to represent the United States of these Americans for Flesh and Blood. Who are they? Who are your 3 U.S. FAB representatives?
This is a tough question. Can you tell me yours real quick?
My U.S. ones or my Canadians?
Canadians, yeah. Hit me with your Canadians. We'll see how we go head to head.
All right, this is you. There might actually be some like cross pollination here, but my 3 that if I had to go send them out to the Gauntlet and to the Coliseum, it would be Isaac Crute, Yuki Lee Bender, and Tariq Patel. Those are my 3. And there's my backup squad is like people like my God, I'd have like Dave Rude, I'd have Aaron Shantz, I'd have Matt Dilks, my God, like Sean Dollywall. Like, there's a lot of other dudes that I'd slam into that bus, kind of to slot in. But that's my three. It's Tarek, Isaac, and Yuki.
Man, this is a super tough question because there's a lot of great options. I'm gonna just name a couple great players that I'm friends with because, like,
That's the safe route.
I'm gonna say Yang Yang,
Yeah.
who's just, I mean, he's incredible, and then I'm gonna say Mark Johnson, aka Mo Bogsley. He's just on the rise ever since he started playing, and I'm gonna round it off with.
You could say Tarek Patel.
I'm not counting Tarek. He's left us. He's gone.
Welcome home, son.
I'm like I should hit someone. So I did the Midwest. I did East Coast, and I'll hit someone on the West Coast. I'm gonna just say Isaac Jessen because that I'd still love his top 8 run of nationals last year.
What's crazy is how much talent you're leaving on the sidelines. People like Michael Hamilton, Brody Spurlock, Tyler Horsepool, Michael Fang. Like, it's Dalen Mack, Brian Basoko. It's up not 10 in Grace, that's for sure. But man, what a gauntlet! Like you said, it's just crazy how much talent is out there. I would love to see a sort of like a Worlds or like a World Cup where it's a team event, 3 players, Blitz, CC sealed, just bing bang
That'd be
boom.
awesome.
I think it would be incredible.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Thomas Von Freshness, what is there left to say to you, my good friend? This is not a goodbye. It's until the next time, and we have that coveted 3-timer Blazer that so far I think there's the 2-timers. There's Matt Rogers. There's Tarek, I believe. There's Tannen, who are 3-timers on the show. We got to get, and now there's you as a 2-timer as well. So who's that next 3-timer? That's the big one. So we're gonna see who it's gonna be. But man, oh man, we're all excited. So Thomas,
can't wait.
Please,
I'll send you my measurements.
Oh, damn right. Absolutely. That Blazer that gets you into sort of that exclusive skybox that if you're a 3-timer, you have that Blazer, you're legally allowed to shadow me at all events and just stand behind me and just critique me at all times. I think that's kind of the benefit that you get from being a 3-timer on instant speed.
I think I like that, or just anytime you say something cool or do something cool, we just golf clap.
Yeah, you're
like kind of our appreciation.
Saying something cool is not really, you'll.
It's true. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So 2 things. Number 1, let's start thinking of a name for our Hot Dogs Across America tour. And the second thing is, please explain to everybody all the good things that you're doing and where they can consume them. Your podcast, your Discord, everything that you're doing, Thomas. Tell us.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on again. It was always a pleasure. I love chatting with you. Love having you on mine. I love being on yours. And for those who don't realize and they're watching or listening right now, Flake is the best. And the world and Flesh and Blood is much better off because of him. So, appreciate him, damn it. So, or else, I don't know.
Else what? There's got to be consequence.
Yeah, there's going to be consequences. Now, my podcast is Fresh and Buds. You can find it on all audio platforms. It's on YouTube as well. I'm on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. You can hop into the Buds Discord. We have a lot of fun there. Flake's there, as well as a lot of other great buds. And we keep it pretty relaxed and chill. And we play some games on there too. So if you're looking to pick up some webcam or TTS games, hop on in. And give me a follow, give me a listen. And we have 3 episodes. You're a 3-timer of Fresh and Buds with Matt. So
I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, man. All right, friends, thank you so much again for listening to the Instant Speed podcast. And Ben, again, big shout out to our Patreon members, all of them. For as little as $1 a month, you can give me a pat on the back and say, keep going, champ. So thanks again for listening to the Instant Speed podcast. We'll catch you next week. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. See you next week on ISP.